Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatiravanachari. Yamunatiravanachari. Jara Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari. Yamunatiravanachari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya. Jai Gaur Premanande. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahams Paridadikara Stotra Sadashimas Divine Grace. Abhay Charanarvinde Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahams Paridadikara Stotra Sadashimas Divine Grace. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Jai Gaur Premanande. All glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirahe Ashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome for today's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 63rd chapter, text number 26, which is on the board. We'll try to recite this verse first. Kalo Daivim Karma Jiva Swabhavo Divyam Kshetram Prana Atma Vikaraha Tat Sanagato Bija Roha Pravas Twan Maya Yasyasya Tan Nideshyasam Prapadyate Kalo Daivim Karma Jiva Swabhavo Dairvam Khetram Prana Atma Vikaraha Tat Sangato Bijaroho Pravas Tanmayasya Tannidhem Prapatyate Kalo Daivim Karma Jiva Swabhavo Dairvam Khetram Pranatma Vikaraha Tat Sangato Bijaroha Pravahas Tvanmayasya Tannidesham Prapadyate Kalo Daivam Karma Jiva Swabhavo Vairam Kshetram Pranahatma Vikara Tat Sangato Bijaroho Pravahas Tvanmayasya Satannidesham Prapadate. Please chant कालो दैवं कर्म जीव स्वभावो द्रयणं क्षेत्रं प्राणात्मविकारः तत्सङ्गतो बीजरोः प्रभावात् त्वान्विशेष तन्निषेधं प्रपद्ये कालो दैवं कर्म जीव स्वभावो धैर्यं क्षेत्रं प्राणात्मविकारः तत्सङ्गतो बीजरोः प्रभावात् तन्मयस्य तन्निषेधं प्रपद्ये. Thank you very much. What word meaning? Kala, time. Daivim, destiny. Karma, the reactions of material work. Jiva, the individual living entity. Swabhava, his propensities. Daivam, the subtle form of matter. Kshetram, the body. Prana, life air. Atma, the false ego. Vikraha, the transformation of the 11 senses. Tat, of all this. Sangataha, the aggregated as the subtle body. Bija, of seed. Roha, and spout. Pravaha, the constant flow. Tvat, your. Maya, material illusionary energy. Esha, this. Tat, of it. Nishedam, the negation. You. Prapadate, I am approaching for shelter. Translation and purport by disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: time, fate, karma, the jiva and his propensities, the subtle material elements, the material body, the life air, false ego, the various senses, and the totality of these are reflected in the living being subtle body. All this continues pure material energy, maya, and endless cycle like the like endless cycle like that of a seed and a plant. I take the shelter of you, the negation of this maya. Purport: the word bija roha pravaha is explained as follows: the conditioned soul accepts a material body with which he accepts to enjoy the material world. That body is a seed, a bija, of the future material existence, because when a person acts with that body, he creates further reactions, which grows roha into the obligation to accept another material body. In other words, material life is a chain of action and reaction. The simple decision is to surrender to the Supreme Lord, releases the conditioned souls from this futile repetition of material growth and reaction. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Tan Nishedam Prapadyate indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is Nishedi Vadhan Bhutam, the limit of negation. In another word, after all the illusion is negated, the absolute truth remains. The process of education may be succinctly described as a way of eradicating the ignorance through the attainment of the knowledge, through the inductive and destructive and inductive means. We attempt to refute the speciousness of the illusionary and imperfect and elevated ourselves to the platform of full of knowledge. Ultimately, when all illusion is negated, that which remains firmly in the place is absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead. In the previous text, the Shivajwara is described, the Supreme Lord Shivatwaram Kevalam Japati Mantram, the pure concentrated spiritual consciousness. Now, the Shivajwara concludes his philosophical description of the Lord by saying in this text that the various aspects of material existence are also potencies of the Supreme Lord. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti mentioned that Supreme Lord's own body and senses are, as impelled here by the word tan nishedam, are non different from the Lord's pure spiritual existence. The Lord's body and senses are not external to him, nor do they cover him, but rather the Lord's is identical with his spiritual form and senses. The full absolute truth, unlimited in fascinating the diversity, is the Lord Sri Krishna. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjanam Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pastyadeshatarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gauravakta Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So based on today's words, we'll try to discuss some of the points which are really useful in our life. So once again, I'll read the translation of 26th verse. Time, fate, karma, and a jiva and his propensities, the subtle material elements and the material body, the life air and false ego, and the various senses and totality of these are reflected in the living entity, living being's subtle body. All this consists of our material illusional energy, maya, an endless cycle like that of a seed and a plant. I take shelter of you, negation of this maya. In the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 7th verse, it says, similar to this verse, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashastrani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. The living entity is a conditioned world or my eternal fragment parts. Due to this conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which includes the mind. So, here it is elaborately describing about the living entities' struggle and the why living entity has come in this material world, and what is it struggling, and what is the cycle of birth and death, and what are the things that living entity affects, and any living entity commits any kind of action, it has a reaction. Just like a Newton's third law, we see that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, correct? But here also same thing. A living entity commits any kind of a action, any kind of a karma, and it has a reaction that is endless. So you commit some action that will have a reaction. To negate that reaction, you will commit another action. So that will keep going. So it will doesn't stop. So that is illusionary energy, like it makes us to work. Now, any living entity in this material world is not an idol. A person or a living entity or animal, it cannot say that, or the living entity will not say that I will be sitting idle and I don't do any action. But that doesn't work like that. If he is not serving anybody, he is serving his senses. Srila Prabhupada often describes that, any living entity, any person, he cannot say I am not servant of anybody. If he is not a servant of anybody, he is a servant of his senses. At least he has to work for his senses, so sense gratification. Just like there is one story, Srila Prabhupada describes that in a forest, the lion is the king of the forest, correct? So, if a lion thinks that I am the king of the forest, I will not do any work. I just lie down in one place. I keep my mouth open, and animal will come and fall in my mouth, and I will eat. So that doesn't work like that. If a lion thinks that, and in the forest, if it is keeps the mouth open and without working, and even a small rabbit or a deer comes there and passes urine and goes away, but it doesn't become a food for the lion. So my point is that every living entity in this material world who has taken birth, whether a human being or an animal, it has to work. The question is that what kind of a work it should we do. There are three kinds of a karmas. One is karma, vikarma, and swakarma. So one is karma. Karma means action which has a reaction. Akarma and vikarma. These two are something. One is bounding up in this material world to do reaction for that, and one is liberation from the that karma. So if you do some kind of activity which gives you liberation from this material world, that kind of action one has to do, one has to execute. That is what described in the Bhagavad Gita. So one of the action which is Lord Krishna is recommending here in this verse is just to surrender unto the Lord. No, Sarvadharman parityatya mamekam sharanam vraja. So when you surrender unto the Lord, the actions which you are doing, which will not have or which will not bind you into reactions. Just like people in this material world, they work for the living. Due to the, when they're in the process of working, they make so many kinds of reactions, which will leads into the living entity to take another life in this material world. So Lord is recommending that when you take another life or take another birth in this material world, then you have to go another cycle of birth and death. So these are all decided by our kala, karma, and jiva's propensity. These are all jiva's propensity. So jiva's the living entity's natural propensity to engage some kind of a work. That's why Mayavadi philosophy they says that after the death there will be a liberation. There will be no kind of a work. No, it doesn't work like that. One has to work even after liberation. But what kind of a work which is harmonized to that living entity, which is a natural propensity for the living entity. Just like, for example, if you are shifting from one place to another place, then you cannot remain empty there. You also work there. For example, you are moving from Chicago to New York or Los Angeles. You think that there we will have a free time, but after, when you're moving there, you if you see that you are also working there, so one has to work there. You cannot be remain empty. Just like another example, if you are given a room which there is uh, no what you call no electricity or no light, no food or nothing to do, you just remain in the room forever, you can't live there, correct? You have to do some kind of action. Just naturally, the Mayavadi philosopher says that, after liberation there is no kind of any work, but after that they're going to come down again in this material world, because there is no engagement for the living entity. The real engagement for the living entity is to Jivera Swarupoe Krishna Das. So always a living entity engaged in the service of the Lord, that is real engagement. One may ask, if we engage in the service of the Lord, and what we are going to get. So, if you are engaged in the service of the Lord, you will be blissful, knowledge, and happy. That's what living entity wants. When you see the material world, in this material world, every living entity wants to be blissful, correct? Every living entity wants to be happy, correct? Every living entity wants to be live eternally, correct? And that's based on that Krishna has designed this material world of Dukhalayam. No, it is this material world is always suffering, always miseries. Even if you don't want, miseries will come up. Even if you don't want birth, it will come. Even if you don't want old age, it will come. Even if you don't want disease, it will come. These are all forced upon the living entity. But the living entity needs a liberation from this material world. That's why Krishna says that, when you come to my abode, there is no such kind of miseries you will attack. So you will always happy and eternally living. So when we see this material world, everybody tries to be happy in a wrong way, just like a person searching a diamond in a garbage can. Nobody puts a diamond in a garbage can, correct? But this living entity is searching for the happiness. For the happiness, he's doing working day and night very hard, and working 10 hours, 8 hours. At the result, sometimes the living entity, the person who was working very hard, he may be happy, he may be not. He'll be always miseries. Oh, I didn't do this. I forgot to do that. I need to pay the mortgage. I need to take care of children. They always anxieties, miseries, and always, you will be in a problem. But the living entities wants to be happy. How one can be happy? By oneself engaging in the service of the Lord. Just like a part and parcel of the machine is attached to the machine, then it has got some value. Like in a machine, there has number of tools, number of parts. If one tool or one screw is fallen from the machine, it has no value, correct? When as long as the screw or a tool which is attached to the machine, then it is has got some value. Similarly, as long as we are engaged in the service of the Lord, we execute in the service of the Lord, then only we will find happiness. So that happiness will be eternal. How? When we surrender unto the Lord, and when we do the execution duties of the Lord. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Manmana bhavat bhakto madhyadi mam namaskaram, always think of me. And uh, and in the Bhagavad Gita, same it says that, like antakale cha mameva smaranam mukta kalevaram. So when a living entity thinks of me leaving his body, he comes to my abode. How he can think? When you do the practice, throughout your life, thinking of the Lord just by chanting the holy name, remembering the Lord's pastimes, and doing the service. That's why it is called life is a preparation, death is an examination. When you prepare your life throughout your life, thinking of the Lord, and doing executing service of the Lord, doing all kind of prescribed rules, and at the end of our life we will attain the Lord. So there are so many things like when you do according to the scriptures, Vedic scriptures, when you follow that, then you don't have a seed. You know, just like if you plant a seed, here an example it is given, which makes us clear. When you plant a seed, the trees grows. When trees grow, when plant is growing to tree, then it will grow fruits, flowers, and fruit, and again the seed comes out. When you sow the seed, again another plant, another tree. So its cycle is keep going on. But one has to stop the cycle of this birth and death. That's why one has to surrender unto the Lord with a full knowledge. It's not we are surrendering unto the Lord with a half knowledge. Oh, it's sentimental, based on sentimentals, or based on the somebody's realization. No, Srila Prabhupada always says that Krishna consciousness is a scientific movement. It has got both theory and practicals. Theory is like reading Srila Prabhupada books, reading the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. When you read the books and you execute the practicals, like in the science, we have theory and practicals. In the laboratory, we go and do the theory, or we do the practicals, and we come to the result. And here also we see that reading the books is theory, practicals is executing the devotional service. You get that realization. It's nobody has to say that you become a devotee or you become a bhakta or you become a pure devotee. It will realize by your own self and by your action, by your words. So one has to surrender to the Supreme Lord with a full knowledge. Lord Krishna is saying that you know this material world is very very difficult to overcome. In the Bhagavad Gita again, Krishna says that you know that Daiviyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Durataya. This illusionary energy is very very strong. One may not take it as uh, lightly or jokingly, or he thinks that okay, I'm living happily. I may be getting I'm happy in the next life too. No, Srila Prabhupada says in the describes sometimes a prime minister, he may be thinking this life I'm a prime minister, I got all kind of facilities. Next lifetime he may be a dog in the street, because that is a material nature. According to his action, according to his karma, he may take in this material world as a dog, but who knows? So one has to very careful dealing with the material world. But who says that, who decides this? What is going to be next life? One, the living entity, based on his action, it can be decided, and Prakriti, material nature, where material nature observes what all the actions you are doing. So it observes and it keeps a record each and every action. Based on each and every action, the birth will get to the next life. So just like a living entity takes a birth in this material world, from day one, the actions are recorded. So if the parents are pious, then child will grow into the pious. Child will have a bright future based on the scriptures. If the parents are taking care, then child will have a nice future. Otherwise, if the parents are not aligned with the scriptures, aligned with the shastras, or aligned with the dharma of this material nature, then again the reactions is coming up. So this process, one has to get educated himself, by reading the books, by reading the scriptures. So one has to get educated himself, and to end this cycle of birth and death. And this in this verse, it is glorifying Supreme Lord being glorified. This energy is an illusionary energy. This illusionary energy is so strong that it can change your subtle body. So when subtle body is changed, then next lifetime you will get a same kind of a body which you are thinking of. There are so many examples in the Bhagavatam which gives us the information, just like Bharat Maharaj. There was a king. He was he was very pious king. He was doing all kind of activities which are aligned to the scriptures, which are aligned to the dharma, and he was following the Vedic scriptures very strictly. So the time comes to give up his kingdom, just like we have four varnas and four ashramas in the human society: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And another ashramas are like Brahmachari, Grasta, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. So this king, uh, he has executed his duties very nicely according to the dharma. Then at the time comes, so he has to, after certain age, he has to give up his kingdom and go to the forest and meditate on the Supreme Lord. So there, till this time, it was going everything well, and he went to the forest, started meditation. So as a Kshatriya, he has given up all his kingdom, and he has given up his responsibility to his sons, and he was meditating in the forest. Suddenly, he was, um, he was seen as where he was seeing there a deer was chased by a tiger. So when a deer was chased by a tiger, and suddenly the tiger pounds upon the deer, so deer jumps off the lake. So the deer was pregnant. It gives the baby, it leaves the baby behind, and the deer dies in the hands of tiger. So at that time this incident was seen by that king, Maharaj Jadabharat Maharaj, uh, and he took the care of the deer for some time, and he started showing all, and he started affection on the deer, and he's taking care of deer all kinds of things. So naturally is a like propensity of a king is to maintain, to take care of citizens. The same propensity has come. There is nothing wrong in take care of a living entity. He felt compassion, he felt I should, this is my responsibility, I should take care of this deer. So, in the period of time, what happened? He started developing affection for the deer, and like the main duty, he came to the forest to meditate and to do the devotional service, exclusive devotional service to the Supreme Lord. What happens? The slowly the attention, the focus was turning away from the Lord to that living entity, the deer. So one day it happens, when he was doing yajna, when he was doing chanting the mantras, in his mind he's always thinking of the deer. Oh, the where is my deer? And what have, did he had food, or did he, is he okay, or some living entity did not attack? He was always constantly thinking while doing devotional service, while chanting mantras, or while worshipping the Lord. He's constant thinking of the deer. Oh my dear, oh my dear, dear. So in that way, one day suddenly the deer disappeared, that small deer. So he was so disturbed. See, the living entity's attraction and focus totally got disturbed, and one day the deer was disappeared, and he was so disturbed. Suddenly death has come. Now, while living his body, he thought of deer, and next life, he became a deer. The fortunate thing is here, you know the living entity, that king, he remembered all the mantras, and he may remember the what he was in in his previous life. And then in that dear body, he started associating with the saintly persons, and then he got next life as a human being. So Krishna is giving here is lesson that in the Bhagavad Gita also it is Neha Vikramanashosti Patyavayo no Vidyate Swalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So even if you execute a little devotional service, that will be a permanent asset in your bank. Just like we put the deposit money in the bank. So if we withdraw, there is zero, correct? But here in the Krishna's bank, that it will be a permanent asset. It will protect you from the greatest danger. So here, in this case of the king, it has happened the same thing. The king was executing his devotional service throughout his life, and at this last moment of his life, when he's leaving his body, he thought of a deer. The reaction of that action, material nature is so strong, so so strict that he has to take the dear body. Even his dear body, it has got remember all the kind of devotional service, all kind of mantras. So next lifetime he took a birth as a human being. There he was named as Jada Bharat. So he executed his life, and he molded his life in a very serious manner. Then he went back to home, back to Godhead. So ultimately, one has to be very, very serious, you know, thinking of attachments or thinking of compassion. So one has to develop attachment towards the Supreme Lord, because He is a giver of shelter, He is a giver of knowledge, He is a giver of ultimate happiness. So this is one story, so which tells clearly that why one has to be careful of his actions. And another thing is that uh, whatever you do execute a devotional service in your lifetime, then that will become permanent asset, and that will protect you from the greatest dangers in this material world, because this material world is so dangerous, and it is always giving the miseries. Like we see that so many diseases are coming, and so many miseries are coming, so many like scorching heat, scorching cold, and we cannot escape from that. So what we need to do is take the shelter of the Supreme Lord. So this ocean of miseries will become into and will be insignificant. So when one execute these kind of principles, and because these senses are very, very dangerous, senses always needs kind of engagement. Senses always, eyes wants to see nice things. He like tongue wants to taste nice palatable dishes, and ear wants to hear nice music, and nose wants to smell nice fragrance. These are required, it's not denying. When Mayavadi philosopher says we should stop engaging senses, but here we are not saying don't engage your senses, don't stop your engagement. We are saying that dilute or divert your senses in the service of the Lord. Engage your tongue in tasting Krishna Prasadam. Engage your tongue or in chanting the holy name. You know, that's how you engage your senses. Engage your eyes seeing the form of the Lord. Engage your ears hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Just now we are all hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna Katha or Krishna Kirtan. And engage your nose, smelling the fragrance lotus flowers offered to the Lord. By this, there is no kind of bondage. When you engage your senses in sense gratification, it will get bondage. Just like, for example, if you see a nice bungalow or a nice car or a nice object, to get that, you need to work hard. For getting some kind of, if you want to buy a car or if you buy something, you need to engage, you need to work very hard. At the end of the day, if you get that object, if you get that thing, and what you're going to do, and your another misery is in how to take care of that, and another misery if you lose it, and you will lament again. These two things are like like anxiety, lamentation, miseries. This anxiety, lamentation. When you till the to get that object, you will be always in anxiety. Oh, will I get that? Will I get that? Will I get that? After getting that object or a thing, then anxiety comes in to picture. So how should I take care of this? What should I do this? And how should to maintain this maintenance anxiety? When you lose it, you will lament, oh, I lost it. So this is a way, like people are in miseries. But if you engage the senses in the Krishna service, and if you engage everything in the service of the Lord, there will be no anxieties. There will be a some kind of satisfaction in the service of the Lord. So rather than engaging in the service of the Lord things, if we engage ourselves, our senses in our own service, and there will be a reaction for that services. So one has to carefully avoid those reactions. That's why even though billionaires, millionaires, rich people or poor people, everybody are not escaping, are not excused of these miseries. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha anudarshate. Birth, death, old age, disease, these things are forced upon us, no matter if you are rich, poor, or whatever you are. But these things are forced upon you. So these miseries are very, very difficult to overcome. So that's why one has to take shelter of the Lord. And in totality, one has to understand that we should be very, very careful, because our subtle body is changing every day. So when we use our subtle, when you use our senses, then subtle body will have a change. So subtle body is like Atma, whatever the desires you are thinking of every each and every moment, the correct subtle body is always creating for the next lifetime. Just like uh, I'll end with this story. Many years ago, there was a one rich businessman. It's happened in many many years ago. So he was very successful in his business, and that he has got sons, and they got married, and they got their sons, and now that person is on deathbed. So he was thinking, he was close, even he cannot able to lift his hand, or he was totally on deathbed. He was thinking, he was asking his wife, oh my dear wife, who are there in his room? Now I am leaving body, doctor have already said that this person may leave. It is no guarantee. Then his wife said, your three sons are there. Then who else is there? And three sons are there, and their sons are there. And who else is asking? He's asking questions like their wives are there. Your son's wife, your daughter-in-law is there, and your sister is there. And in this kind of, he was asking questions like, who else is there? Your grandson is there. Who else is there? Your servant is there. And he shouted at one point, he's saying that if everybody is here, who is taking care of my shop? Who is taking care of my business? See, you know. And even at that point, he was thinking of his business. So a time comes, he leaves his body, and the next life he took a birth, the same house. So it has so much attachment towards his family and members. Same house opposite to that building. There was a dog. He gave birth. The dog gave birth to four pet dogs. For kitchen. So one of the dog is him. So he was, due to that attachment, the dog's little baby dog was going towards that building, because that attachment has developed. You know, when the owner of the dog, actually the sons of the his person, drew away with a stick. This dog, why is coming to that house? So disturbing, and they drew away with a stick, beating the stick. So this is an example where one has to be very careful with this, controlling the senses, and one have to be very careful of this subtle body. So I just summarize what we discussed today. So today's verse is describing about how living entities struggling with all the six senses, subtle body, and there is three kinds of karmas: karma, vikarma, and akarma. One has to do an execute of duty which has no reactions, and this cycle of birth and death is endless, just like a plant and a seed. When you sow a seed, a plant will come, flowers will come, and again fruit will come, again seed will come. This is compared to the cycle of birth and death. So to avoid this cycle of birth and death, one has to take the shelter of the Supreme Lord, totally surrender unto this Lord, and execute. Even if you in the process of execution, even if you failure, just like the king Jadabharat Maharaj, he did surrender. He did all kind of things, but at the end of his life, he thought of deer, and in that body also he remembers the slok. He remembers mantras. He remembers the all kind of duties which is performed. There are many examples. That's why the verse which is speaks about little execution of devotional service, which protects you from that greatest dangerous. That is Neha Vikramana Swasti Pratyavaya na Vidyate Swalpamapi Yasa Dharmasya Trayato Mahato Bhayat. So that point we discussed, and how to engage our senses. We discussed that senses needs engagement. We cannot shut down the senses, do nothing. And another point we discussed that every living entity has to do some kind of a duty. If even if a king of the jungle, king of the forest, lion has to do some duty. So in that we have got an example of lion. So even if lion is in the forest opening his mouth and lying on one place, no animal will come and fall into his mouth. He also do some duty. So doing the duty is important. At the same time, what kind of a duty? Boundless duty we should do. So these are points which we discussed. So now, if I want to hear any questions, comments based on this, so corrections, we'll have Chandra Prabhu is senior devotee. I'm sorry if I speak anything wrong. Mike is coming, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class.
Thank you for.
Um, I was thinking about this time, fate, and karma, these constituent elements. And the thing that came to mind is that Krishna has created this sandbox for us to play in. It's the mirror image of the spiritual world. And time is eternal.
Right.
And we're also giving the role as co creators.
What is that?
Co creators. We
Co-
co create. In other words, because of the karma,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, the three dharma, vikarma, and akarma. So we have a section where the karma is it's supposed to be fruitive activities and things that are supposed to be authorized. So for the unconscious person, they're thinking about creating this karma in perpetuity. They want to go on and on. So this mirror of the eternal aspect, which time doesn't exist in the spiritual world, in the material world, they go on and on and on. Then you also have this aspect of fate. So my fate, it could be looked at, my fate is I'm going to receive some benediction.
Mm.
And my fate could be because I made some error. I'm going to get some malefic, reaction. So we have these two things that are going on, and they don't stop. The only thing that's stopping is the ingredients such as the body and the things that help to amass the body. So we have all these things that are going on because we have an opportunity to play like we're the controller. Like you use the example of the lion, he just lays down and he waits for someone to walk into his mouth. Um, I don't have to do anything, but action is required. Um, this is also made mention when Arjuna is wanting to negation, he wants to not fight
Yep.
because of his sentiments with his family, but because of his nature. Simply by being in the material energy, there's the push that you create, and there's the push that's happening because of the energies. And that primary energy would be Maya. She's pushing you. She's, hey, you know, you want that new car, work real hard. Like you say, you work hard, you do all these things, you're being pushed. So you're under the control of these energies so that you can either, well, probably both exhaust your desires to enjoy and also to be exhausted from the attempt of enjoying. So those are some of the things that I saw with regard to these propensities, because it's natural to want to create things, but that creation that we're doing in the spiritual world, we're trying to create a facility for Krishna to enjoy. Now that's turned on us. We want to create a facility for us to enjoy. So we get to pretend like we're controllers, and then we forget that we're not. And then we get another body and we start the whole process all over again.
Nice comments, bro. I like that comment which you have made. The pushing the material energy. We have to do that. Yeah, nice comments. Thank you for that. Nice. Anyone has something to ask? Okay. Okay, we'll stop here. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Gaur Premanande.